Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So this video will be about what qualifies as an acceptable Ruqya reaction. A Ruqya reaction is essentially any physical deviation from the initial reference point, which is unique to each individual. The Ruqya reactions must be significant, consistent, and hard to subdue. What I mean by hard to subdue is, in my case, my reaction that I normally get is my leg violently shakes. I might make a short video on this, I might post a video online of how I react to the Ruqya. If I was to force myself to hold my leg down, one of two things will happen. Either that reaction will move to another part of my body, like possibly another one of my limbs will start shaking violently, or if it's the case of a pain you're getting in one part of your leg, and I don't know, maybe if you press that part of the leg to try and subdue that pain, it'll just go on to another part of the leg, or it might just move to another part of the body, but it'll be a significant deviation from your reference point. And another thing that possibly would happen if I held my leg down is I would just get this extremely uncomfortable feeling, as if my leg wants to just explode, like something just wants to just shake my leg violently from the inside. Like, again, scientifically, logically speaking, it doesn't make no sense, but for as long as a Ruqya is being recited, that's what happens to my body if I am afflicted with a spiritual disease. Now, over many years of conducting Ruqya diagnosis on myself and others, I found that Ruqya reactions are unmistakable deviations from the reference point, leaving no room for doubt. These reactions are consistent. As long as you continue reciting Ruqya, you will not return to the initial reference point. You might experience a single persistent physical reaction in one part of your body, which is a case for me, or various types of reactions occurring in quick succession all over. Sometimes they escalate as well. A hallmark of true Ruqya reactions is their resistance to being comfortably subdued. If you attempt to suppress them, the reactions will manifest in another part of the body. For example, my primary Ruqya reaction is my left leg shaking violently. If I try to stop it, other parts of my body will start to twitch and spasm. Additionally, during a Ruqya diagnosis, it is crucial to stay relaxed and not tense up. This is the opposite of what is needed during Ruqya treatment. If the jinn is causing excessive movement during treatment, it is more effective and painful for the jinn if you hold the affected body part down forcefully. The Ruqya reactions are indeed from Allah, who generously provides us with clear signs of spiritual affliction through these reactions. In other words, Allah is not stingy when it comes to giving us these reactions. When you ask Him to reveal what is wrong with you, He responds with unmistakable signs. If you have doubts about a reaction, then it likely isn't a genuine reaction at that point. A significant reaction is one that is clear and void of doubt. It's possible that what you're unsure about may develop into a significant, consistent reaction that's hard to subdue. By the time of the doubt, it cannot be taken as a Ruqya reaction. So, for instance, if you're doing a Ruqya diagnosis and your left leg just becomes slightly heavy, but it's not clear enough for you to sort of class it as something significant, you're just noticing a slight shift in the energy in your body, which is sort of gathering in one part of the body, but it's just very subtle, and you still have that lingering doubt as to whether it's a reaction. Now, it might be escalating, it might be leading towards a genuine reaction. However, at the time of the doubt, I would not class it as a reaction. That's what I'm saying here. As previously mentioned, a crucial aspect is that Ruqya reactions during diagnosis are difficult to suppress. Scientifically, this phenomenon is hard to explain. Every time I recite Ruqya with the intention of diagnosing a specific spiritual affliction, I consistently experience reactions to the same spiritual ailment if I am indeed afflicted. For example, I might feel a floating sensation as soon as I begin my recitation during a Sihr Ruqya diagnosis, followed by my left leg cramping and shaking violently. I might actually post a video of this, inshallah. Yet, as soon as I switch my intention for another spiritual ailment, these reactions would immediately cease. Obviously, that would mean whatever other ailment that I'm switching it to, I'm not afflicted with it. These reactions serve as an immense boost to my iman, as they provide a tangible and immediate response to my supplications. It is rare to see such instant answers to prayers in other acts of worship. I've mentioned this point earlier in the book, but it bears repeating. The Ruqya dua of a pious Muslim is always accepted. We have never observed any interference in our Ruqya dua except in cases where the patient is engaged in sin. Each time I've been cleared of a spiritual affliction, it has been a bittersweet moment. While I'm grateful for being healthy again, I miss the profound connection with Allah that I experienced through these clear Ruqya reactions. Allahu Akbar. It is even more astounding when I perform Ruqya on others, especially children who are unaware of Ruqya yet exhibit textbook reactions, such as muscle spasms in places that would be difficult to fake or pretend. This brings me to my next topic. What types of reactions can we anticipate and what insights can we derive from Ruqya diagnosis? I will delve into these aspects further, inshallah. Another important point to consider is that it is possible to experience the same reaction when diagnosing different spiritual ailments. For instance, one might develop a headache which they never had before, both when checking for sihr and when assessing other spiritual afflictions. The key here is that any significant deviation from the reference point is considered a valid reaction, and it must be consistent. So, for instance, if the headache appears, it must remain for the duration of the recitation, and if it does not, then for it to still be classed as a positive Ruqya reaction, then that pain would maybe escalate into something else, either a different kind of pain or it's going to appear somewhere else. But it needs to be like proper significant, not just something that you're unsure about. Yeah. When I refer to a significant Ruqya reaction, it doesn't necessarily imply that the reaction must be intense. Rather, it should be clear and consistent throughout the duration of the diagnosis session. I must emphasize that we do not associate specific Ruqya reactions with particular spiritual ailments. I find it astonishing how some people attribute specific reactions or symptoms during Ruqya diagnosis to particular afflictions. For example, I recently came across a claim from someone supposedly experienced in this field, stating that if a person's hand shakes, I believe it was during the Ruqya diagnosis is what they meant, it indicates the presence of a flying jinn. For one, what benefit does it have if the jinn is flying or if it's crawling? That's the question I'm asking myself here. And the other thing is, you cannot attribute that to a flying jinn, because we have found from our experience that a person might shake without even jinn possession. Yeah. And it is impossible, absolutely impossible for a jinn to hide during Ruqya diagnosis if it's done properly. And even 30 minutes for a pious Muslim is more than enough for a diagnosis. It takes me, alhamdulillah, less than 5 minutes to diagnose myself, sometimes within seconds. My initial diagnosis might take about 5 minutes or less, like about 3 to 5 minutes. But once that spiritual disease gets exposed, I'm reacting within seconds, literally split seconds sometimes. As soon as I switch my intention, the reactions are quick, or they stop quick as well. It's unfortunate how people arrive at such conclusions without employing a rigorous diagnostic method. The list of Ruqya reactions that I'm going to basically give you guys is not going to be exhaustive, and it's possible you might experience reactions that are unique to you. The key point here is that any reaction must be a significant deviation from the reference point established at the beginning of the before the diagnostic session. Note, although physical movements during the Ruqya diagnosis often indicate the presence of a possessing jinn, this is not always the case. It is possible to have sihr or waswas conditioning without a possessing jinn. If you find your reactions are unclear or very mild, they may not be considered genuine Ruqya reactions. True Ruqya reactions must be clear and devoid of doubt. The principle I follow is that if your reactions are not significant or consistent enough to carry out a more thorough, advanced diagnosis, they should not be classified as reactions. Additionally, it is important to remember that personal sins can interfere with your Ruqya diagnosis. Therefore, make sincere tawbah and then attempt the Ruqya diagnosis. This is interesting, subhanAllah. So just remember, guys, we don't attribute any particular symptom during the diagnosis to any particular spiritual affliction. So if you start sweating, it does not mean you're possessed, or it doesn't mean you've got the evil eye. It just means you're reacting to the Ruqya for whatever you were intending it for. So if you were intending it for sihr and you start sweating, it means you've got sihr. That's what it means. My personal favourite reactions that I get is my leg just shaking violently. And I get this whether... I'll get this with any spiritual disease. Whether it's waswas conditioning, whether it's sihr, jinn possession, you name it, I'll get it. Even what would be classed as a relatively harmless spiritual disease like waswas conditioning. I mean, it's still dangerous. It can still cause physical diseases. But relatively to sihr, it is not as harmful. But still, my reactions are still strong, and I like this because there's literally no room for doubt. The other reaction that I enjoy, that Allah gives me, is when I see things on my eyelids. Yeah, and I must mention, some people may get a reaction less than the space of 5 minutes. Their hand will shake, maybe 3-4 times. Would I class that as a reaction? So let's say they're reacting after once every minute, or once every 1 minute 20 seconds. I would say yeah. I would say that because it's a consistent reaction does not mean bang 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 bang. If you know what I mean, it can sort of have a gap in between it. Just keep that in mind. I remember with one sister, I was reading on her, and the reaction that she started off with was her finger was sort of lifting like up in the air and then going back down, and only I was able to notice it. Her mother was there, her father was there, and then I said to the mother, "Did you see that?" She said, "I didn't see it." And when we started actually keeping an eye on her fingers, other things started happening as well on top of the finger just going up. She started shaking, her eyelids started going. But initially the finger thing was happening maybe every 30 seconds. You understand? Having said that, in my case, my fingers and my toes can be a bit twitchy sometimes. And this is a separate issue I'll discuss in later videos. This could be due to just the amount of possession I've suffered. Sometimes it takes a while for your body to get back to normal. And that it could be that, but I know it's not. I know it's got nothing to do with possession, because during my reference point they might still be a bit twitchy. And then when I've actually got the affliction, I start reciting. That's when my body really reacts to the Ruqya. Yeah, it's just so I thought I'd mention that. Now here's a list of potential Ruqya reactions for the one suffering from sihr, and any of these can happen for other spiritual diseases. So you might get headaches or pain in the body. You might get like a hot or cold feeling in certain areas of the body or over the whole body. Limb movements or severe muscle spasms, which means you have sihr with jinn possession, most likely. Not necessarily. From what we've recently discovered, I mean, I've had sihr, cabal sihr, which I'll explain in subsequent videos, where it's been put on me and there's no possessing jinns. You might see moving images of bright lights while your eyes are closed during the Ruqya diagnosis. So you might see the person who's actually doing it on you whilst you're doing the diagnosis, but you'll see not an image in your brain, but an image on your eyelids, like an actual image. You might see the sahir like just looking down at you, or the jinn itself. You know, you might feel nauseous, vomiting, stomach pains, maybe especially if you've eaten the sihr, limb or joint pains, tightness of chest, difficulty in breathing, feeling sleepy or very tired. I must mention here, this is why your Ruqya diagnosis should be done when you're wide awake, not when you're sleepy. It shouldn't be done last thing in the day. Yawning is not classed as a Ruqya reaction. I repeat, yawning is not classed as a Ruqya reaction because it's something that comes from the shaitan. The shaitan likes it when we yawn, and it's something that is disliked by Allah. And the Ruqya reactions, which are viable, come from Allah. So keep that in mind, guys. Yawning is not classed as a Ruqya reaction. While the eyes are closed, your eyelids may flicker, move or blink rapidly. At the very least, there may be a slight feeling of wanting to open your eyelids. Goosebumps or itching skin. If you have sihr accompanied by jinn possession, meaning the jinn came through the sihr, you may experience a range of emotions or feelings such as panic attacks, anger, anxiety, nervousness, butterflies in the stomach, embarrassment, or an unusual sense of relaxation, similar to having taken a hot bath, or like as if you used a jacuzzi, or consumed anti-anxiety medication. These emotions or feelings are manifestations of the waswas conditioning that the patient is enduring, primarily caused by the possessing jinn. Although the qareen may also play a role, it is important to note that these emotions or feelings are almost always accompanied by a physical symptom or reaction. So if you start experiencing this, if you continue your Ruqya diagnosis, it's going to escalate into something else. If there's any significant change to your reference point, then this means that you are suffering from sihr. This principle applies when checking for any of the spiritual diseases. So you might get a reaction which is not even mentioned on this list. Or it's possible you might get a reaction which is mentioned in the section of for the reactions that I've mentioned for Ain. But the main thing is you need to know what the Ruqya was intended for. Now this list is mentioning the common reactions for sihr. We have found that when we diagnose people for sihr, these are the common reactions that they normally get. Now moving on to the common reactions for Ain diagnosis, we've noticed people with Ain get facial muscles twitching, especially the eyes. Usually occurs prior to the Ruqya diagnosis even begins. If so, during the recitation this will intensify and your eyes may start rolling back to the point the whites of the eyes can be seen. Now I believe this flickering is a lot slower compared to the flickering you might get for some of the other spiritual diseases I'm going to go through. You'll just get a strong desire to open your eyes. You might see a static eye. All this we've had from experience. You might possibly see the garments of the one that's giving you the Ain as well. You might be shown purple, blue, or just patches of different colours whilst your eyes are closed. No, facial twitches does not equate to jinn possession. But let's say you start seeing, you know how I've mentioned you were seeing a static eye. If that eye starts moving around, it's most likely a possessing jinn. That's most likely come through Ain. Whilst checking for Ain, some people will notice that there's a slow movement of the head and neck, almost as though you're trying to release tension in your neck. Movements during diagnosis are usually a sign of jinn possession, but we found that this type of movement during the Ain diagnosis is simply a sign of a severe type of Ain. The people that react this way may or may not react to jinn possession diagnosis. Common reactions for mass diagnosis. Mass is basically jinn possession, guys, if you don't know. You'll get movements. You'll get major muscle spasms, you'll get sickness, you'll get a major headache, severe pain, feeling of irrational fear. When you close your eyes, you can see moving images, animals and people. You might just get like an extreme emotion. Even before the Ruqya diagnosis begins, you might want to just cry. Yeah, these are common reactions people get. Now, for waswas conditioning, just give you a brief overview of what waswas conditioning is. When a jinn enters your body, it leaves some kind of conditioning behind. Furthermore, the qareen can give you this as well. The qareen itself is not a spiritual disease, so you cannot read Ruqya on the qareen shaitan. However, it can leave waswas conditioning, it can leave some kind of conditioning. So if your parents, when you were younger, if they were scaring you from the police, or should I say by using the police, the police are coming, if you don't stop misbehaving, I'm going to call the police. That's why I would advise parents to use these tactics, because a qareen can play on it. It can just continuously just repeat them to the child, and before you know it, they'll have like an irrational fear, like a phobia from the police. And usually in the case of possessing jinn especially, you have to remove this once the jinn has been eliminated. And it's something that most Rakis overlook, this spiritual disease. You know, they think it's game over once the jinn leaves, but no, you have to get rid of this. And we know because we've had patients that have removed the sihr, removed the ayn, removed the mas, but they're still reacting to the Ruqya, and we found it was the waswas conditioning. And once this was removed, did they stop reacting to the Ruqya? And that's profound. With this one, the eyes will flutter rapidly, unlike the ayn, which is a lot slower, and it's sort of like your head will just start going back, and your eyes will start just going to the back of your head until you can see the whites of your eyes. Yeah, but in this case, you won't see the whites of the eyes, and you'll notice the speed may fluctuate with it. You might start feeling heart palpitations. After this Ruqya, you might just feel exceptionally relaxed, almost as though you've just, how you feel when you're in a jacuzzi or in a really nice hot bath on a cold winter's night. That kind of relaxed, but it's unusual. Like, wait a minute, I feel different after taking this doing this diagnosis. If you start getting exceptionally tired during the diagnosis, yeah. Another symptom I'm not mentioning here really is if you fall asleep, guys, and this applies to any spiritual disease. If you fall asleep and it's that really deep sleep, like you don't know how you ended up even falling asleep, that's classed as a reaction as well. Personally, like I said, I like consistent reactions. Hence, for me, the bodily movements are the best. So just beg Allah to give you clear reactions, and He will. Now, do the Ruqya diagnosis when you're not tired. This is important. I had to advise someone today as well. They messaged me saying, I'm going to do the Ruqya diagnosis before I sleep. That's the worst time to do it, because you do not want to be tired. You want to be wide awake. The time it takes for one to begin experiencing Ruqya reactions during the diagnosis, it can vary. Generally, it may take a few minutes for reactions to manifest. Personally, I usually react within seconds of starting my diagnosis. However, when dealing with a new spiritual affliction, by new, what I mean is, I've just got it. Not new as in we've never heard of it. It just means I've been newly or recently afflicted. It might take about 2-3 minutes for the initial reaction, but subsequent reactions tend to occur within seconds. If, for instance, you normally react to Ruqya within 3 to 5 minutes, then if you don't react within that time frame after conducting treatment, it is likely that the affliction has been cured. For example, if my positive Ruqya reactions occur within 3 minutes of beginning the Ruqya diagnosis, I would typically continue reciting for another 2 minutes to confirm the affliction is gone. Nonetheless, I would still perform a more intensive and prolonged diagnosis lasting 20 to 30 minutes to ensure with certainty that the ailment has definitely been eradicated. Typically, reactions during a diagnosis can begin as soon as one starts reciting with the intention of diagnosis. Although initial reactions might not immediately manifest as physical movements, you may sense a change within, a sensation akin to floating or a noticeable shift from your reference point. This feeling can then escalate, leading to muscle cramps and strong spasms in various parts of the body. It's a truly unique experience. As I mentioned earlier, while my initial reactions might take a minute or two to surface, the subsequent reactions occur much more quickly, often instantly, alhamdulillah. I usually recite Surah Al-Falaq and a Nas in sets of 5 pairs. I will actually increase that now, to be honest, to 7 pairs. And I typically react before finishing the 5th pair. This method has been, or even, yeah, that's actually correct. I've never had to go anywhere near the 7th pair, if I'm honest, before I react. What happened with me one time was, I've just done my treatment and I've cleared everything. And I know I've cleared it, but I decided to read a bit extra. And when I got to the 4th pair, I got a slight twitch in my left foot. And it was literally just put on me whilst I was doing my diagnosis. But I was not dealing with an ordinary magician, nor was I dealing with an ordinary jinn. This was something on another level that allowed this thing to do this to me during the diagnosis. That it had the audacity to come and put it back on me as soon as I took it off. So just in case, I like increasing it, for like 7 pairs ideally. And this method has been effective for me. I recommend extending recitation for the Ruqya diagnosis. Some spiritual ailments might be deliberately concealed within other spiritual diseases, making them take longer to react to the Ruqya. Yes, guys. I've recently discovered that it is possible for certain magicians, especially those that come in the form of jinns, so jinns can be magicians as well. They can conceal spiritual diseases within each other. And what that means is it'll take longer for you to react. You'll have to recite for a longer period. And these, in my case, I'd never even heard of those other spiritual diseases. I could count them during the Ruqya diagnosis. I could recognize them. And I knew they existed. But I wouldn't be able to tell you like exactly what they were. I knew what the purpose of them was, so I suppose in a sense that was enough. There was 3 spiritual diseases concealed under another spiritual disease, which when I draw the diagrams for you, you'll understand it. It was kind of like they were encapsulated within another spiritual disease. And yeah, that was the situation at the time. To clarify, I'm just going to repeat myself here, sorry guys, but yeah, I once discovered 3 new spiritual afflictions intentionally encapsulated within the jinn network. These remained undetected for a while, necessitating a longer Ruqya diagnosis for them to react. Once initially diagnosed, they reacted almost instantly in subsequent sessions. And inshallah, I will delve into this in more detail. Another important consideration is to wait until you have returned to your reference point before resuming the Ruqya diagnosis session if you are still reacting to a previous diagnosis question. What I mean here, guys, is this is something I'm going to elaborate on in much more detail when we actually start doing the practical side of things. But when you do a diagnosis, you're asking Allah to show you something. So for a diagnosis, it's one question at a time. So, oh Allah, show me, do I have sihr? Now, if I start reacting within a minute, I don't have to continue my diagnosis because Allah has shown you. He's shown you via significant, consistent reactions which are not easy to subdue. So that means, you move on to the next question, which if you're doing a general diagnosis, you're going to move on to the next major spiritual disease, which is the various forms of the Ain, which I'll go into. But before I go on to that, I need to wait until my body returns back to its reference point. I can't be doing another diagnosis whilst my body is still shaking about. You understand? Now, with myself, honestly, I'm at a point now where because my reactions, Allah has blessed me with having very clear reactions. So they start and stop literally within a split second of me changing the intention, and that is beautiful. Walhamdulillah. So what I do is, I will, and I'm obviously, we'll get into more detail, but I personally don't take breaks usually when I'm doing a diagnosis. So I just keep reciting and I'm switching my question, my intention to what I need, because my reactions start and stop instantly, and they're very consistent. So I will only react to the things I'm afflicted to. For instance, if I'm afflicted with one thing in particular, I could do a diagnosis of 20 other things that I'm not afflicted to, and I'll come back to the same thing, and I will consistently react to this, but I will not react to the other things. This is what I'm saying, guys. The method is beautiful, it's accurate, it's consistent, it's a gift from Allah. So learn it. I will teach you. Just stay tuned to these videos, inshallah, and they'll be very beneficial. I'm just seeing if there's anything else that is worth that needs mentioning here. Yeah, so guys, like I said, these reactions here are not exhaustive, so you don't really even have to write them down, honestly speaking. Just take a good reference point, and the main thing is, when you start your diagnosis, if you're afflicted, something's going to start happening to you physically. You'll just know. Just remember that, guys. You will just know. And if it's not significant, and it's not consistent, then I would just scrap it. I would not even class it as a reaction.